Music with its captivating melodies and rhythmic beats is an integral aspect of human experience, found all over the world, in malls and elevators to movies and social media. It is loved by everyone, with the average person spending around 57,670 minutes each year listening to their favorite artist. Many parents and educators are concerned by the influence of the music industry on young generations. Music is filled with themes of violence, sex, drugs, and especially in the most popular genre of hip-hop and rap. My study looked at what specific components of violent songs in the instrumentals, a cappella, or a combination of these elements cause the violent tendencies. Discovering the specifics of what songs cause emotions is crucial to understand and properly censor this for children without completely banning the genre. In this presentation, I'll be covering all the important information I found through my research. I will talk about prevalent research from my literature review. I'll talk over my methodology, the results, limitations, and the conclusions and future discourse. In order to examine which components of the melodies cause the negative effects in high school students, it is important to understand the pre-existing research on the topic and additional studies that support all three possible explanations for this behavior cause, either the lyrics themselves, the instrumental, or an overall combination of both. When initially studying the effect of violent music, the theory of catharsis is a common claim. It supports the idea that music actually improves mood and promotes less aggressive behavior. It claims that expressing expressive emotions will later resolve these tendencies, said Palmer. The theory is where the word cathartic comes from, and it is a common assumption that expressing these emotions is a safe medium like music, would allow people to cleanse themselves from hostile emotions. Unfortunately, this theory is not true, and all modern scientific research points to the contrary. Professor Craig Anderson at Iowa State University conducted the first study on college students to prove the correlation between violent songs and violent emotions. The professor used word association tests between nonviolent and violent words, in addition to self-reported feelings of hostility when measured on state scale. This study was first to provide clear demonstration of violent lyrics effects. Through the rap genre, rappers describe themselves as doing legal and violent things quite frequently. Many of these songs call their listener to act upon these actions and follow their lead. An example of this song is F the Police by the group NWA. One of the verses says F the police coming straight from the underground. Although the message of this song is overall about police violence and the negative effect on Black communities, it still has violent themes and it pushes people to overall F the police. It taps into the subconscious mind, bypassing rational thought processes, and can have profound impact on decision making, said Ikeba. When artists implant these ideas into young impressionable minds, kids often act them out since culture is deemed acceptable and their idols represent them doing it. The overall trend of violent genres like rap and heavy music has faster rhythms and is often heavily bass boosted. A study analysis of heart rate impact of multiple genres of music concluded that rap music causes an increase in heart rate, while other genres like classical decreases the heart rate. The increased heart rate can cause to activate someone's fight or flight response. This response pushes the people to act more violently in situations, since the instinct can lead people to use more physical applications than settling any thing through words. My method for testing my research hypothesis can be explained by looking at two main parts. The first is the method I use to calculate feelings of violence among my population, and the other is the medium used to incorporate the music into my testing. The means of communicating my testing was via Google form that allowed me to access a greater population of people. I first sent out an initial form that reached across the whole population of my school to gather interest, and then sent out later with my actual experiment to get more responses. I decided to use violent behavior vignette questionnaire that was developed by psychologists to test to test people's current emotions and feelings of violence. I selected portions of this test to better fit my experiment and questions that are more relevant to high school students. I would have the subject read a vignette, which is also known as a short story, that involves interpersonal conflict, like a man cutting in front of them in line. This conflict leads them to have a specific response. Then after reading the vignette, they would prompt with a 9 responsive for what to do. 3 of these are being violent, and 6 of them are not violent. Some of the violent ones are considered to be shove the person or threaten them, and non-violent would be ignore it, leave them alone, or walk away. The last part of my methodology was the medium of distributing music and the selection chosen to play. I chose a song Floor 555 by the late XXXTentacion, who is a famous rapper from Florida. He is known for his violent, distorted, or sad and unhinged music that has a lot of emotional appeal to address hard topics. A lot of his songs are violent and are perfect use for this study. There's 4 questions in my survey. The first was control that had no music played beforehand. This was to see the overall violent tendencies of my population. Then the next 3 questions had a video clip inserted beforehand. The first one being instrumentals of the song, and then the second being a cappella, and the last being the full song. The individual was instructed to listen to 45 seconds of the song and then continue playing while answering or reading the vignette and giving the response. With my results, I will conclude a statistical test at the significance level of alpha 1% to test if my data from my experiment provides convincing statistical evidence that listening to violent song increases violent behaviors among high school male students. I calculated the p-value to be 0.0019, which is less than alpha. This means that there is sufficient statistical evidence that violent music causes violent actions in high school male students. Based on my findings, I believe that lyrics themselves are the greatest contributors to these emotions. The instrumentals had the same results compared to the control, showing that they had little to no measurable effect on the emotion of kids, even though they have harsh and fast beats that can promote increased heart rate. With the lyrics showing only a 5% difference from the full song, I can conclude that the lyrics are the main reason for violent songs' behavioral effect on people. Since the full song also includes the violent lyrics and just adds on the instrumental effects can only show an overall 5% increase, while the lyrics have the majority of the violent responses. My experiment had several limitations that could affect my quality and results. My ability to conclude the research question. The artist I played, XXXTentacion, is very famous, and people are often familiar with his work, and this could cause the songs to be less effective. Since the people are familiar with his work, they might have correlated different emotions of happiness if it was considered to another event in their life. Other possible flaw in my experiment: individuals who participated in my experiment volunteered to do so. This can introduce voluntary bias because they could either be interested in my research or for other reasons volunteer that could cause the overall population to have different results. Lastly, the experiment was a Google form, which means I could not proctor each individual. This was helpful since I could spread out, I can get more results from people that I could do on my own, spending the time for each person playing the music. But this means that I could not regulate if they listened to the complete 45 seconds of the song and answer the question correctly. If they had any other confusions of it, it could be ignored and messed up. Additionally, each person could be listening to the music in a crowded place with other people affecting their moods. All these limitations are valid and can worsen the overall results of my study. In conclusion, my research has provided data to support 2 important new findings. The first is that violent music does have psychological impact on high school male students, as in the same way as it does for college students. This information can have drastic implications for parents or educators dealing with development in children. The popularity of violent music is only growing as older genres like rock and jazz, who had more mainstream appeal, are losing their grasp on the youth. This means that more people will be exposed to music that negatively controls their emotions without them knowing. This data can affect psychologists with students who have anger issues or disorders, like intermediate explosive disorders that are prone to violent actions. Since this information can inform patients to avoid violent music, since it can provoke violent action that was already vulnerable to. The next steps for future research would be the long-lasting effects and exposure of violent music. There are many high schoolers who favorite genres involve violent music, and the long-lasting effects of constant negative messages could be detrimental to development. Since if people spend a lot of their time listening and having this violent impact on their emotions, they could build up emotional responses that could be negative to the overall community around them. The second takeaway from my research was that lyrics were the primary component of music that promotes behavior. This result could negatively impact the music industry, especially violent genres. If it becomes a great enough concern for people that music they listen to invokes violence, many people will boycott songs. This could also be positive, since artists would have to change more to less violent songs and choose more themes that are acceptable to human psychology. This project outcome could also affect musicology, specifically music theory. It could be more effective since this is the study of basic elements of music. If lyrics become a greater part of the overall music experience and affecting how artists portray themselves, this could lead to the threshold, or this could lead to more people focusing on it. Since I discovered that lyrics are the main component that causes violence, the next steps for research should be to find thresholds for what is considered to be violent music. Specifically, what themes are most harmful for children. For example, songs with violence and guns are worse than songs about drugs and abuse. These could help strengthen the overall understanding of this topic and help parents and educators help children avoid any songs like this that could promote inappropriate behaviors. In conclusion, my research highlights the significant impact of violent music, particularly in lyrics, on high school male students' behavior. These findings underscore the urgency for further investigation into long-term effects of exposure to such content and the necessary for measure to mitigate its potential harmful influence on youth.
Thank you. Some questions. How did you determine which results generated by your method were most important to informing your new understanding?
Do you mind repeating that?
Sure. How did you determine which results generated by your research method were most important to informing your new understanding?
Yeah, to best answer that, when looking at my chart that I had presented earlier, I calculated the overall percent of violent actions through the answers, and the difference between certain questions percentage compared to the control. The greatest distance, I used this as a factor for picking which had the greatest impact.
Okay, thank you. How did limitations of your method or your data influence your new understanding?
I think limitations of the fact that I wasn't able to puncture the test. I feel like many people may have just answered to fit the study, since they were just like, because I asked them to do it and they could, or not, I didn't ask them to answer like that, I asked them to do the study and they're trying to maybe help the results, and I believe that this could push my understanding to be less.
Okay, you're searching for a word there.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. What was the most important research skill you developed as a result of the process, and how might you apply it to your future endeavors?
Yeah, I think my most important skill I learned was would definitely be comparing research articles and figuring out which ones, even if they're like contrary to each other, which have the most value, as since some had opposing arguments of the control, the effect of music and When looking further into those, I found some had flawed methodologies and had other scholars who contradicted or opposed their work, and this helped me figure out which data was from future research was good.
Okay, all right. Thank you.